the next item is questions to the First Minister, and the first question this afternoon is from Senedd Williams. Thank you, Llywydd. How is the Welsh Government ensuring that it adheres to its statutory commitments to be a globally responsible nation under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015?
Thank you. Our pioneering Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is a central part of our approach to becoming a globally responsible nation for Welsh communities today and for future generations. We measure our progress through our annual report on the well-being of Wales, which was published in September this year.
Save the Children say the occupied Palestinian territory is now ranked as the deadliest place in the world for children, has the highest rates of child malnutrition globally. UNICEF reported last week 3 boys and a girl were killed by an Israeli airstrike as they queued for a piece of bread. Their short lives among the 14,000 children who have been killed in Gaza. The UN Secretary-General highlighted Gaza now as the highest number of children amputees per capita in the world and warned the conditions in Gaza may amount to the gravest international crimes. The Future Generations Commissioner for Wales has written to you, calling on the Welsh Government to take action, outlining your responsibilities under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, reminding you that our commitment to future generations extends beyond our borders, and our voice on the global stage should confront injustices. So what is your response to the Future Generation Commissioner's call? And do you agree that we must not allow Wales to be complicit in what Amnesty's recent research has found to be genocide against Palestinians? And if so, will you advocate for an end to UK arms sales to Israel and ensure all Welsh Government activities or partnerships provides no support for companies implicated in this unlawful and inhumane military action and occupation?
Well, thanks very much. And you're right, I think we've all been watching developments in the Middle East with real concern and interest. It's not just Palestine, but obviously very changing and shifting stands in Syria now, and we don't know what the next chapter will be in that particular story. You refer specifically to Palestine. I think we're all very concerned about what's been happening there over a prolonged period of time, and you're quite right. The Future Generations Commissioner has written to me and set out his concerns. I took the opportunity just last week in the British-Irish Council to share my reflections, in particular on the situation in Palestine with the Prime Minister and other leaders, especially in relation to Palestine and also the Trump presidency. We, of course, have called for an immediate ceasefire, unconditional release of hostages and the removal of restrictions on humanitarian aid. There are limits, of course, to the powers that we have in terms of being a government, and we have responded, and it is up to the UK government, of course, to take the lead when it comes to foreign affairs.
Altaf Hussain.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Thank you, Senedd, for raising this burning issue. First Minister, being globally responsible should apply to every decision taken by your government, including planning decisions. Over the past few weeks, the Welsh Government has approved a number of large-scale solar projects, including one at Gleis in my region. These projects use large number of solar panels. Rare earth material, indium, gallium, and tellurium, play a crucial role in their manufacture. The mining of such minerals is often undertaken using child and slave labor. There is also ethical consideration when it comes to the manufacture of panels. The biggest manufacturers of photovoltaic cell is China, which has been found to be using slave labor from ethnic minority populations such as the Uyghurs. First Minister, what steps are you taking to ensure that solar farms approved by your government only use ethically and responsibly sourced materials in their construction and operation? Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Altaf. And you're quite right, we want to be a globally responsible nation, and that's why what you're seeing is a significant shift away from fossil fuels and into renewable energy. And this, of course, is part of that strategic shift that we are taking in Wales. That's why we're very proud that we're speeding up planning decisions in relation to renewable energy. But you're quite right, we have to be careful in terms of where the resources come from and make sure that they adhere to the kind of human rights that we hold dear, in particular when it comes to child labour and slave labour. So I'll make further inquiries just to make sure that we're absolutely watertight on those issues when it comes to building our infrastructure in the future.
John Griffiths.
First Minister, returning to the horrific situation in Gaza, where we know tens of thousands of children and women have been killed following the Hamas attacks over a year ago. And as we've heard from Senedd Williams, we have the largest number of child amputees in modern history. Many of those amputations taking place without anaesthetic following the attacks on medical facilities and services. We know that hunger is being used as a weapon of war and disease is spreading. The International Court of Justice has dealt with some of these matters in dealing with genocide proceedings, and as again we heard, Amnesty International has stated that in their view genocide is taking place. I very much agree with the Future Generations Commissioner's letter to you, First Minister, and welcome some of the statements you've made and the donation to the emergency appeal for the Middle East. But I would be grateful if you very carefully consider what more you can do, given the extent of the situation, both in making representations to UK government and more directly considering, for example, working with public sector bodies in Wales to urgently review their pension schemes to ensure that they are ethical and not supporting the actions of the Israeli government.
Well, thanks very much. I think we've all seen the horrific scenes in Palestine and the murder of innocents, and isn't it ironic this time of year to talk about the murder of innocents in that time, in that part of the world. I think it's really important that we keep up the pressure. Our responsibility is to make sure that it's the UK government that's keeping up that pressure. That's where the responsibility for foreign affairs lies. But as I explained, I took the opportunity to do that just last Friday with the Prime Minister, and I know that he is very concerned about the situation as well. We will do what we can within the powers that we have here within Wales. Pensions, I'm afraid, there is a limit to what we can do within that area because of our constitutional restrictions.
Rhys Bowen.
Thank you, Llywydd, and thank you to Senedd Williams for her very important question. Back in September, I asked you about armament productions here in Wales which are used to perpetrate war crimes. Your response was very brief at that point, and you said that this issue was beyond the devolution settlement. But as Senedd Williams has said, Welsh law does place duties upon us. One of the aims of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is a Wales that is globally responsible. And the Social Partnership Act places a statutory duty on public bodies to use procurement processes which are socially responsible. That also includes pensions. And it's very possible that public pensions are used to fund companies which provide weapons to Israel who are perpetrating war crimes against Palestinians. I also understand that parts of the F-35 jets which are sold to Israel are produced here in Wales. Now, the figures that I have are a little higher than those quoted by Senedd Williams. 17,442 children is the figure that I have. They're different figures, but they do show how much chaos and how horrific the situation is there. Now, we can't hide behind the devolution settlement. Everyone has to do their bit. So what is the Welsh Government going to do to ensure that Wales truly deserves the title Nation of Sanctuary? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
financial support has been provided to companies in Wales who export arms to Israel since the 7th of October attacks. The Welsh Government has robust procurement governance and audit procedures to safeguard against potential non-compliance with procurement regulations. And also, just in relation to the pensions, the regulations controlling local government pension authorities are not devolved. So the Welsh Government has no control on decisions on investments made by elected authority members in Wales and the Welsh Pension Partnership.
Cwestiwn 2, Sam Rowlands.
What's the First Minister doing to encourage investment into North Wales?
We recognise North Wales has many strengths that are attractive to investors. We work with the UK and local governments and our regional stakeholders to ensure those strengths are known across the UK and internationally, and I fully intend to showcase these at next year's Investment Summit.
Thank you for your response, First Minister. I certainly welcome the announcement of the Investment Summit for 2025. And as you rightly pointed out, North Wales has many strengths, in particular its location within the United Kingdom with infrastructure that works well into North West England and then links into Ireland, into European markets there as well as exceptionally skilled people who are entrepreneurial spirits who want to do their bit in our communities as well. One of the benefits of the last UK Conservative government, of course, was its relationship with the Welsh Government in establishing the growth deal and the investment zone in North East England and the free port in Anglesey, Ynys Môn as well. So I wonder how you see using the growth deal, investment zone and the free port to attract more of that investment, and will you again commit today to ensure that North Wales is talked about loudly and proudly at the Investment Summit next year?
Well, thanks very much. And it was really good that you got some of the way as a UK government in terms of the investment zone, but you never crossed the line. You gave the money to England in relation to investment zones, but it's only a Labour government that has now getting it across the line. £160 million available in the next 10 years. And it is, I think, and I'm sure you are, it's right and proper that we all welcome that. We want to see that investment in North Wales. We've got a statutory instrument that's been laid now in relation to the Anglesey free port, and we're hoping that the reliefs will be cleared for January. That will unlock huge potential in that part of the world, and we know that there are investors lined up and ready for action in that part of the world. So you're quite right, it is important we welcome this, it is important we showcase North Wales, that North Wales has a huge amount to offer, but I think these two separate proposals are things where we can really drive investment into those particular parts of the world.
Mabon ap Gwynfor.
Diolch, Cywydd.
Thank you, Llywydd. If we are to strengthen the North Wales economy, then we do have to see that we can carry goods across North Wales in a sustainable way in order to get things to market. Now, I've raised on a number of occasions in this chamber the need to enable freight to travel across the North Wales main line, but so far nothing has happened. We know that the government in the Senedd back at the beginning of this century made the case and commissioned a paper making the case for freight. We know that the Taith report, the Regional Transport Plan for North Wales back in 2009 had said that we needed freight. We know that the North Wales Transport Commission report of last year said that we need freight, but to date there's been no movement. So when will we see freight introduced on the North Wales main line?
Thank you. Well, I hope that this is something that will be seen in the context of the growth deal and that there are possibilities in that area in seeing what's possible in that area. This, of course, ties in with the need for investment in rail. We haven't seen that for many years. Those discussions, of course, this is a responsibility on the UK government. Those discussions with the UK government in terms of the structure for the railways, they are developing, and once we have something new to say about that, we will come to you, but that will help to have more freight on the railways.
I recently visited Theatr Llwyd in Mole to see how work is progressing. It'll be so much more than an important producing theatre, with 100 new jobs being created, 240 core employees, and they are developing tourism apprentices as well. The turnover has risen from £5 million to £13 million, and it's a great example of partnership working between public and private investment, a great place for growing wellbeing and the economy. North Wales has become very popular as a destination for the film and music industry. Business leaders have been urged to support Wrexham's bid to become the UK's City of Culture in 2029. First Minister, the Wrexham and Flintshire Investment Zone originally included creative and digital, as well as advanced manufacturing, but that was dropped. Now, Creative Wales and the Federation of Small Businesses have said they would support it being included again if that's a possibility. So do you think this could be a possibility to help further grow this important industry in North Wales? Thank you.
Well, diolch yn fawr, Carolyn. And can I just say that Theatr Clwyd, I think, is the jewel in the crown of North Wales culture, and it's really important that we, as a government, have invested in it. It's a massive investment in what I think is a really important development in North Wales. And as you say, it brings with it new jobs, new opportunities for construction, new opportunities for tourism. All of these things are things should be celebrated. I think we were all found it very difficult last year to make those difficult decisions in relation to cutting the budgets for the arts. That hurt a lot, but we were really pleased that this the money for Theatr Clwyd was continued. Now, in relation to the investment zones, there was a specific within the prospectus and the guidance, it said that we have to focus on a single high-growth potential sector or a specific cluster if more than one sector. So these are the kind of rules of the game. It was determined that in relation to the North East, that we should focus on that advanced manufacturing space. Proposals can support more than one priority sector, but only where there's evidence that those sectors intersect. And so that's why there was no compelling evidence, I'm afraid, to suggest that the creative and digital sectors intersect with the advanced manufacturing. So that was the reason for that. But let me tell you that we are absolutely committed to continuing with that investment in Theatr Clwyd. It is something that should be celebrated. The work that they do there is really something to behold, and I would suggest that members take the opportunity to go and visit when they're in the area.
Questions now from the party leaders, and may I congratulate the new leader of the Welsh Conservatives, Darren Miller.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Llywydd, and good afternoon, First Minister. If you'll permit me, Presiding Officer, I just want to start my contribution today by paying tribute to my colleague Andrew R.T. Davies. As many people will know, both Andrew and I entered this Senedd in 2007, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work alongside him in a close way for the past 17 years. He's been an outstanding leader of the opposition for more than a decade, and his contribution to the Conservative Party, this Senedd, and the people of Wales has been second to none. He also led, of course, the Welsh Conservatives with great passion, and for that we are truly grateful. Now, all of us in this chamber know that it would simply not be possible to do our jobs without the care and support of our loved ones. So I also want to put on record my thanks to Andrew's wife, Julia, and his wider family for the support that they've given him throughout his tenure as leader of the opposition. Andrew, you leave your role having achieved record sets of Senedd election results in 2021, and I now have some very big shoes to fill. So I've put on some extra thick socks for the rest of the day, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck in. And I'd also like to say, if I can, from the outset, that as the new leader of the opposition here in the Senedd, I take this responsibility seriously. And I therefore look forward to having a constructive relationship with you, First Minister. I won't shy away from holding you and your government to account, but where it is possible, my party and I will work with you in the interests of the people of Wales and with other political parties in this chamber, because we are here elected to serve them, and that's why they will always be first in our minds. First Minister, over the weekend, the people of Wales were struck by Storm Dara. It was a devastating storm to many communities up and down Wales, causing some significant damage and disruption to our transport and energy networks. And our hearts, of course, do go out to all of those who are adversely affected. Many people in Wales got alerts on their mobile devices. Some, unfortunately, didn't seem to get those alerts. Now, we are grateful to the Welsh and UK governments for sending those alerts. It's something that we asked for in the aftermath of Storm Bert. But ultimately, First Minister, with many livelihoods now blown apart, can you outline what support the Welsh Government is making available to those who have been impacted by the storms, and what financial resources you're going to give to local authorities and others in the public sector to make sure that they can deal with the aftermath?
Well, thanks very much. And can I first of all welcome Darren to his new role as the leader of the opposition, the Conservatives in Wales. And I've no doubt we will have some very robust but constructive exchanges in the Senedd. I'm almost looking forward to it, Darren. I would like to wish him and all members of the Chamber a happy Christmas. And, you know, we've had a difficult year. It's been very challenging, but I hope we can all go away, particularly after you hear the budget later on today, with a spring in our step, looking forward to what the next chapter will bring. But you're quite right, Darren. It was a very challenging weekend for the people of Wales. That storm was a red alert storm. It meant that there was a danger to life, and we were really pleased that we were able to agree to putting out that alarm so that people had as much warning as possible that there was a very serious situation coming up. I would like to thank the people of Wales for heeding those warnings. They took it seriously, and the fact that we didn't lose any lives in Wales in the face of such a huge storm is something that I think we need to take note of. There are clearly lessons to be learnt in many areas, and in the same way as we learnt lessons from just a fortnight ago in terms of advanced warning, there will be lessons to learn on this occasion. There are still many people in Wales who have no electricity. There are still many people who are feeling very vulnerable. We are obviously in discussions with the electricity companies who have identified those people. They're working with local authorities, but it is a very concerning situation, and some have been told that that will continue until Friday. Now, that is not a good situation for vulnerable and old people. So if you know of people in your communities, please check up on them. I know the council is going to do all they can. I know the third sector are doing all they can. And I know also that a huge amount of work has been done by those electricity companies. 695,000 customers have already been reconnected, but it's those pockets that are left that are very challenging. I think we all need to take our responsibility seriously in looking after our neighbours at these difficult times.
You didn't pick up on the question I asked about the additional resources available to local authorities and other parts of the public sector that have been hit, and I hope you'll be able to respond to that question in your next response. Obviously, it is vital that lessons are learned, and I'm glad to hear that you say that you'll be doing just that. Now, if I can, I want to turn to another storm that Wales is contending with, because in October, we heard that the UK government was breaking a key Labour manifesto pledge by increasing taxes on working people, by putting up employers' national insurance contributions, a devastating decision that will suppress wages, scupper investment and undermine efforts to create new jobs. And all this at a time when Wales already has the highest unemployment rate in the UK and the lowest in-work rate across the United Kingdom. Those national insurance increases, of course, First Minister, will impact on people delivering public services across Wales, whether they are public service employers or whether they are contracted by public services too. Your government's unveiling its budget today, so can you tell us how much of that budget is going to be gobbled up to cover those employer national insurance increases for people delivering public services across our country?
Thanks very much. Look, just in terms of the resources, we will need a wash-up after this event in relation to the storm, as we did last week in relation to the previous storm. Local authorities will need to speak to us in terms of what the situation is. But we're still actually confronting and dealing with the actual situation. So we'll need to do that. But obviously that money in relation to the floods, that has already been allocated, £1,000 for those who are uninsured, 500 for those who were not insured. Just in relation to national insurance contributions, you really do have a cheek, don't you, Darren? On your first outing, you come in here, you talk about devastating decisions. Let me tell you about a devastating decision. Liz Truss. There's a devastating decision. And the price people are paying today...
I can't hear the response. I'm sure the new leader of the Welsh Conservatives wants to hear the response to the question he's just asked.
The price people are paying today is as a direct result of some of the decisions that she made. We have a £22 billion hole in the budget that we need to fill. Now, some of that will need to be filled by that national insurance contribution. Those who are directly employed by the public sector will be covered in terms of national insurance. But what you will hear later today from the Finance Secretary is the highest budget uplift since the beginning of devolution. That's the difference the Labour government in Wales makes.
I'm sorry, First Minister, but that response simply did not cut it. Because the truth is, as you well know, that hundreds of millions of pounds that you say is extra money coming to Wales will simply go straight back down the M4 into the coffers of the Treasury. You can spin it all you like, but this is a smoke and mirrors situation that gives with one hand and takes away with the other. That's the reality of your budget. And we know that it is our public services that will suffer as a result. Another storm that we have faced in Wales in recent years is the storm in our National Health Service.
Now, believe it or not, I want to be able to hear the new leader of the Welsh Conservatives. So can I hear him equally, please?
Another storm that's been afflicting Wales is your Labour mismanagement of our National Health Service. Under Labour, Wales has become the sick man of Britain. We have Welsh NHS waiting lists that have increased for the past 8 months in a row, and staggeringly, over 24,000 people in Wales have been waiting 2 years or more for treatment, and that compares to just 113 people in England, a population size of 18 times the population of Wales. It is an absolute scandal, and it is clear that the NHS in Wales, on your watch as a previous health minister, is broken. What are you going to do to fix it?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. There's an increased amount of money that is coming in for the first time in a very long time. You heard me talk earlier about how difficult it was for us to make those cuts to things like the arts, because we had to shore up the situation in relation to health. That national insurance contributions will be coming, if they're directly employed, the additional funding will be coming from the UK government. £1 billion uplift. That's what we're looking for next year. And you talked about wanting to work constructively. You want to work constructively. Make sure that £1 billion comes to Wales, because we need an extra vote here, and if we don't get it, you won't be getting that £1 billion. And I think it's really important also, you want to be constructive. And let's talk about the NHS. 2 million contacts every month in a population of 3 million people. That is an NHS that is working for the vast majority of people. 50 million uplift just this year, before we get into next year, to cut down the waiting lists. They are coming. The money is going in. There is a huge increase in funding that's going into the NHS, and you will see the difference.
Arweinydd Plaid Cymru, Rhun ap Iorwer.
Leader of Plaid Cymru, Rhun ap Iorwer. Thank you, Llywydd.
Of Christmas, let me also wish the new leader of the Conservative group in the Senedd the best wishes. I think it's a matter of debate whether it's he or Andrew R.T. Davies who's had the early Christmas present, but I wish them both well personally. Last year, food banks in the Trussell Trust network in Wales distributed nearly 200,000 emergency packages, 68,000 of those for children. And for many families, a child's Christmas in Wales is very, very different to the famous image of Dylan Thomas. Food poverty, child poverty, fuel poverty, trap households in a vicious circle made worse by poor housing, poor health and poor educational attainment. But as the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health said last month, the impact of poverty and inequalities on children's health is not inevitable. Now, last week, the Scottish Government announced plans to mitigate the effects of the cruel two-child benefit cap, devised by the Tories and defended and now continued by Labour. This week's budget offers the First Minister of Wales an opportunity to show that she too is serious about tackling child poverty. Is she ready to seize that opportunity?
Well, thanks very much. And I know that there are many people over the whole of Wales who are struggling with the cost of living crisis, something we're acutely aware of within Welsh Government, and that's why we are making sure that our support for the poorest members of our society continues. When it comes to how we protect, in particular, children who are living in poverty, one of the things that we are doing now is providing those free school meals. And for the first time this Christmas, every child in a primary school in Wales will have a Christmas dinner, and I think that's certainly something that should be celebrating. When it comes to what Scotland is doing, look, I'm in charge of what happens here in Wales. I'm not going to go copying and pasting, which is what he seems to want to do, whatever happens in Scotland. There are aspects to welfare that are devolved to Scotland that are not devolved to Wales. They do not provide free school meals in Scotland. And it is important, therefore, for us to do the things that are appropriate for us here in Wales with the powers that we have.
I didn't ask her to copy what was happening in Scotland. I asked what she was going to do. I've had a quick look through the budget. I can't see the step change that we need in terms of child poverty. Yes, I was delighted that after voting against it many times, Labour did eventually come round to being ready to implement Plaid Cymru's long-standing policy on free school meals. And remember, First Minister, the number of children living in families beneath the poverty line who are under 4 years old. We need to think about them too. Now, when the Tories were in power in Westminster, Labour couldn't find enough opportunities to criticise the two-child cap. Fast forward to July, and one of Keir Starmer's first acts as Prime Minister was to suspend 7 of his MPs who voted to end it, just like their refusal to give us a new funding formula, just like denying Wales its fair share of HS2 funding. It appears that in Labour's new playbook, power comes before principle. And remember, this is a Labour Wales First Minister who promised drastic change thanks to her so-called partnership in power. So with just 14 days to go until Christmas, will the First Minister share with us her wish list for drastic change from Keir Starmer and his Labour UK government, or will Plaid Cymru's suspicions be proven right that Santa is the only man in red who we can expect gifts from this Christmas?
Oh, you sort of long and hard for that last little bit. So well done. That was a good line. Thank you. But the important thing, I think, is for us to take note of the magic money tree that is once again growing in Plaid Cymru's garden. Because every week, we get asked for more money for this and that. We get asked for more money for housing, for education, for transport, and now we've got the two-child cap. And you never tell us what we should cut, ever. Because it's the kind of politics that you promote is one that is unrealistic, that is not grounded. I'll tell you what the politics you'll be hearing later on this afternoon will be about. It's the politics that matters to the people on the streets of Wales. It's the bread and butter issues that they care about, that they told us about in the summer, the things that they are focused on, making sure that the more money goes into our NHS, more money goes into our schools, more money goes into our transport system, more money goes into housing. Those are the things that matter to the people of Wales. Those are the priorities. And of course we will keep on pressing the UK government for our fair share of things like HS2. I took the opportunity to talk about that once more with Keir Starmer on Friday. So, yes, we will keep pressing, because that is my responsibility as the First Minister of Wales, is to make sure that we get a fair share. But you are a party who wants independence, and yet you want the UK government to pay for all of your little wish lists. You can't have it both ways.
Now Secretary of State for Wales was wishing on a magic money tree when she wanted £4.5 billion for HS2. Carwyn Jones, when he was First Minister for Labour in Welsh Government, was unrealistic and wishing on a magic money tree when he was seeking a fair funding formula for Wales in agreement with Plaid Cymru. Now that Labour are in power on a UK level, they don't give two hoots about what's in the interests of the people of Wales. And standing up to Keir Starmer is something that we have to see from a Welsh First Minister. Work with him, yes. I want to have a positive relationship with him. But without challenge, there will be no change. And families need that change. The Child Poverty Action Group's assessment of how things stand is damning. Families with 2 children and 2 parents working full-time for the national minimum wage are left £138 per week short of what they need for a no-frills but dignified standard of living. And Keir Starmer's relaunch of his floundering premiership did nothing to offer them any comfort. So when the First Minister met the Prime Minister last week, did she in any way advocate on behalf of those struggling as a direct result of their party's inaction, or is she too happy now to defend old Tory policies dressed up as Labour's?
I'll tell you the difference a Labour government has made in Westminster, just for us directly here in Wales. £157 million this financial year. Extra money coming in. There's a possibility, if they hadn't called an election, the Tories, they would still be in power. We would still be working to a budget that was on the rocks, that were on the stocks, that suggested that that money would not have come. £57 million extra for health just this year, on top of the £50 million that's been put in to cut long hospital waiting lists. £95 million to support families in terms of boosting standards in school. £4 million for green jobs and growth. Extra money for culture. That's the difference the Labour government makes. 5.5% pay awards to NHS staff. 5.5% for people who work in education. That is the difference that a Labour government makes in Wales.
Question 3, Hannah Blythen.
Will the First Minister provide an update on the Welsh Government's priorities for public transport in Delyn?
Llwybr Newydd, our transport strategy, sets out our vision and priorities for transport in Wales, including Delyn. Our National Transport Delivery Plan, plus the regional transport plans being developed by corporate joint committees, will set out how it will be delivered.
Thank you for your response, First Minister.
A successful public transport forum in Flint Town Hall, bringing together a range of organisations and individuals for a panel discussion with reps from TFW, Avanti, Arriva, Sustrans, Network Rail, Flintshire County Council, Unite and ASLA. Tenley's raised immediate issues, such as buses not always serving the interests of communities, often leaving people frustrated and unable to go about their daily life. And when it comes to trains, whilst the current investment in Flint Station is welcome and very well warranted, things like the limited opening times of station facilities are an ongoing cause for concern, especially for lone travellers this kind of year. But looking to the future, there was plenty of support for Welsh Government plans to reform bus services, but to do so in a way which involves stakeholders, whether that's local authority partners, the workforce through trade unions and also the communities. And to make sure that those bus services better connect with the existing station in Flint, alongside additional investment in new stations or halts down the coast in places such as Greenfield. Because when we talk about a metro in my part of the country, it's better buses and fairer fares joining up with neighbouring services over the border that will bring about the transformational change we need. And this is something I certainly intend to continue to champion, and the Transport Forum was just a part of that. So, Prif Doug, can you commit to your government joining me on this journey to seek both more immediate improvements to services, but also invest in our future equitably in Delyn and across the corner of the country?
Well, diolch yn fawr, Hannah, and thanks very much for organising that event in Flint. I think as we move towards bus franchising, I'm really aware that this needs to be done collaboratively with stakeholders and the public. Now, I know the Cabinet Secretary for Transport in North Wales will be issuing an oral statement on progress with bus reforms later today. And I think that franchising could help to bring about the improvements to the bus network that we're all looking to. It's a new model which would allow us to design a bus network which truly puts people first, and that's what you heard from the people in your meeting. Now, we're committed to ensuring the stability and support of our local bus services through the continuation of the bus network grant and the bus services support grant during next year. So you'll be hearing some of that, obviously, in relation to the budget later.
Marcus Short.
It's encouraging that Flint Station was funded by the UK Department of Transport as part of the former Conservative government's Access for All programme to make it accessible for all passengers, especially those with limited mobility. In terms of bus services, however, concerns were expressed as recently as October about cuts to several bus services in Flintshire due to a reduction in Welsh Government funding and rising costs. What, therefore, is the current position regarding the announcement in... Sorry, is someone trying to ask me a question? What, therefore, is the current position...
Carry on, Marcus Short. Thank
regarding
you
the announcement in March following publication of the Welsh Government's roadmap to bus reform that Transport for Wales will collaborate with Flintshire County Council throughout 2024 to make improvements to bus services in Delyn and across the county ahead of the new legislation? And how has the Welsh Government worked with the bus industry during the transition to form a bridge to franchising to contract routes which are deemed to be socially necessary for people in Flintshire?
Well, thanks very much. And thanks, Mark, because I think we all recognise that the situation in relation to bus services in Wales is not where it should be, and that is partly because of the model that we have. And that's why later on today you'll be hearing a little bit more about what the future model will look like. And you're quite right that what we need to do is to make sure that there's a single mind trying to work out how all these different areas connect, that we listen to the public in terms of what they want to see, and that relationship with the council will be instrumental, making sure we're reflecting the needs of the public, not seeing just bus routes being picked off, picking off the most profitable routes. This is a social service, it's an important service, and something that I know that Ken Skates, the Transport Minister, is committed to, and we'll see those changes coming in, beginning with that new bill be coming in very shortly.
Tom Gifford.
Diolch, Llywydd. How does the Welsh Government assess and monitor educational standards?
Nationally, we have a range of data and information, including qualifications data, our assessment data, our results from PISA, statistical releases, as well as information from Estin, our independent inspectorate. Many of these data sets are published on a regular basis for the purposes of transparency and to support improvement.
Diolch yn fawr. Last week we saw the release of this year's TIMS scores, which monitor and assess international data. And in that, we saw that England is now the best place in the Western world to learn maths, has the best maths scores in the Western world. And that is testament, I think, to teachers in England, to pupils in England, but also years of Conservative reforms in education when we were last in government, reforms that were not copied here in Wales. And our last PISA shows show us to be the worst performing nation of any of the United Kingdom nations. Now, going forward, I hope that you will consider that the Welsh Government joins the TIMS programme so that we can monitor and effectively assess the things that we could do better and to see where we lie against our peers. So can I get a commitment from you, First Minister, that this will be the last set of TIMS scores that does not have a result for Wales included?
London challenge. Thanks very much, Tom. And I'm sure you, like me, were very happy to see the additional £50 million available in this year's budget to support standards and infrastructure, because I think we all want to see an improvement in terms of standards in Wales. I can assure you that the Education Secretary is exploring further international benchmarking, and that includes TIMS when it comes to maths and science, and PIRLS when it comes to reading. So I think there are things we can learn from other countries, including England, and we need to make sure that we're working to evidence-based mechanisms to support our children in their development.
Question 5, Adam Price.
What financial support does the Welsh Government offer to local authorities to regenerate town centres?
In Raglan Trawsnewid.
Through our Transforming Towns programme, we are providing £125 million worth of grant and loan funding to Welsh local authorities for the period from 2022 to 2025. The benefits are already evident in a number of town and city centres across Wales.
Investment through transforming towns are valuable. For example, in Ammanford, there is £1 million that's been allocated for a feasibility study to regenerate the old co-op building in the town centre. But in order to deliver those plans, we will need tens of millions of pounds, which would have traditionally come through European funding. Since then, the Shared Prosperity and Levelling Up Fund, and there's a lot of clarity at the moment in terms of what will happen after 2026. The Levelling Up Minister in Westminster had refused to say recently whether or not that funding post-2026 will be allocated according to need or according to the Barnett formula. And of course, if it's the Barnett formula, then Wales will lose out to a great extent. So what is the Welsh Government's stance? Have you made the case to the UK Government that we need a formula that is needs-based? And isn't this another example of the need for a fair new financial settlement for Wales?
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased that you do welcome the additional funding that is going into developing our cities, and I'm pleased to see that Margaret Street in Ammanford has asked for a capital grant to develop the first phase of that strategy. You're right, in the past we've been able to receive funding from the EU to help us develop some of our towns and cities, and the discussions about what's going to happen in the future are ongoing. And you're right, from our perspective, what we need is a formula that works for us, a formula that accepts that need is something that is considered when they provide that funding. So those discussions are ongoing, but of course, we're very eager to see what we can receive in addition. Remember, there has been a pledge when we left the EU that we wouldn't lose a penny, and certainly we'll be trying to ensure that that is the way ahead in the future.
Thank you, Clywyd, and thank you to Adam Price for the question.
In this chamber, I asked the Cabinet Secretary for Housing and Local Government and used the example of Carmarthen, where their local authority is repurposing previously commercial units into residential units, because one of the best ways of rejuvenating our high streets and town centres is increasing footfall by getting more people living locally, using those services locally. That's one way of developing more people in that area, boosting businesses on our high street. So what work is this Welsh Government doing, developing on what I asked the Cabinet Secretary previously, to help not only Carmarthenshire County Council but other local authorities in Wales to help repurpose previous commercial properties into residential properties, increasing footfall in our town centres but also increasing the amount of available housing stock in these much needed areas?
Well, thanks very much. You'll be aware that that is something that has been going on for a number of years, but I think there are other examples where actually, in order to rejuvenate a town centre, you need to make use of some of the buildings that have been abandoned. There are lots of examples of Debenhams, for example, which went bust, and I'm really pleased to see that in Carmarthen, I think in Bangor as well, the local authorities are working with the health authorities to try and change those into health centres effectively, where you increase the footfall. There's a reason for people to come into town. So I think there is real scope here to be creative with some of the budgets that we have put on the table.
Heaven David.
Caerphilly County Borough Councils has developed an anchor strategy, which is seeking to revitalise town centres such as Caerphilly and Bargoed. In Caerphilly, we've seen the opening of Force Caerphilly, the new container market, while the local authorities also working with Urban Foundries Pop-Up Wales project to encourage businesses to set up a temporary basis in empty property, such as the town's Barclays Bank, which is closed. Council-supported pop-up spaces have been provided to local startups on Bargoed High Street, adding real energy to the town centre. And the council has also through the Deputy Leader Councillor Jamie Pritchard, developed a successful events programme such as the Caerphilly Food Festival, Bargain Mayfair, and Ystrad Mynach Spring Fair. All of these are the product of both UK and Welsh Government funding and are product of an anchor town strategy, which we agree that an anchor town strategy is a very good way forward and a good exemplar that Caerphilly has provided to the rest of Wales.
Well, thanks very much. And you're quite right. There are lots of properties within the town centres that have been left empty, and that's why one of the new funds that was established was the Enforcement Fund in 2021 to enable local authorities to undertake enforcement action on prominent town centre properties or residential properties in any location. Now, 6 local authorities have made an application to the fund, including Caerphilly, but there has been a little bit of disappointment, if I'm honest, in terms of the take-up from local authorities in terms of demand on those areas. So if Senedd members could ensure that local authorities are aware of that fund, it would be helpful and important for us to make sure that we don't have dilapidated buildings in the middle of our town centres.
Jane Dodds.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Whilst many of us have moved to internet banking as an option to do our banking, communities still value a physical bank in their town. Lloyds Bank posted profits in this quarter only of £1.3 billion, and yet they are abandoning the residents of Powys. As from March next year, there will be no Lloyds Bank left in Powys. They are moving out of Brecon. They have moved out of Ystrad Mynach, one of the largest towns in Powys. And just abandoning residents, particularly older people and people who rely on cash, such as our farmers. One of the success stories has been the Welsh Pool banking hub, which opened over a year ago. So I'd like to ask the Welsh Government, what are you doing to promote banking hubs and community banks in order to ensure that our town centres remain lively, that people come to them who need the opportunity to bank in person, and to promote those opportunities to our residents? Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thanks very much. You're quite right, Jane. There's been a series of bank closures over a number of years now, and that is something that is of concern, obviously, in particular in those more rural areas. Older people struggle, as you say, but also small businesses. There's a lot of small businesses that like to use those local facilities. But you're also right in pointing out that some of the banking hubs have been quite successful, and we would be encouraging more of those to be set up. UK government also has some ideas around this, and obviously we're having conversations with them about whether there's anything that they have that could perhaps be of interest to us in seeing if that's something that we could extend to Wales.
Question 6, Delyth Joel.
Diolch, Llywydd. What assessment has the Welsh Government made, please, of the safety of coal tips following recent storms?
Public authorities regularly inspect disused coal tips after storm events or periods of sustained rainfall. Following Storm Bert, local authorities, NRW and the Mining Remediation Authority are inspecting the highest priority sites. This is in addition to the ongoing regular inspection and maintenance regime funded by the Welsh Government.
I'm grateful to you for that response.
Coal tip safety is an issue that has gained urgency in recent weeks. The coal tip that slipped down a mountain in Cwmtelery in heavy rain provoked more than just painful memories. With the mud and sludge, there came worry and anger that our communities are left with these ticking time bombs above their heads. Now, I do welcome the bill that the Welsh Government published this week. I am concerned, though, that as drafted, the new coal tip safety regime won't be brought in until 2027. Surely what's happened in recent weeks demands more immediate action. So alongside this bill, can you tell me, please, what you're going to do to reassure residents living under these tips that they'll be safe? And can you confirm if in the meeting you had with Keir Starmer on Friday, you secured Westminster's commitment to giving us the £600 million it will take to clear these tips once and for all, because our communities deserve no less?
Well, thanks very much. But where I would correct you is that this is not an issue that we have come across recently as a government. We've been working on this for a number of years. We have been taking this extremely seriously. There are 2,573 disused coal tips in Wales. We have already set up a very comprehensive monitoring system and maintenance system that is already in place. We've already allocated over £65 million to local authorities. You will hear more from the Deputy First Minister later today in terms of what we intend to do in future and how the infrastructure will look. But this will be a long-term project. It's not something you can switch on overnight, but I can assure you that all the coal tips have been set out in different categories so that those who are most at risk are being monitored more regularly than some of the others.
Question South, Peter Fox.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, what assessment has the Welsh Government made of the financial resilience of councils across Wales?
The responsibility for managing a council's budget lies with its elected members and senior team. Work by Audit Wales on financial sustainability confirms that overall local authorities in Wales continue to manage and plan their budgets effectively in a context of constrained public spending.
Thank you, First Minister. We've seen recently with the devastating scenes across Wales caused by Storm Bert and Storm Dara of the essential part that local authorities play in emergency situations, from providing support, updates and advice to residents to being hands-on, dealing with the impact of flooding firsthand, and we thank them all for what they do. It's essential, therefore, that local authorities are not just funded correctly, but are able to remain financially stable to ensure that they can cope when awful situations arise, such as the sinkhole we saw in Merthyr Tydfil. We will all be very pleased to see that the Welsh Government has announced grants for victims of these storms. First Minister, can you please provide me with an update on the rollout of this new grant and let me know how my constituents are able to access the vital funding, as I've already had some to date that have not been successful?
Well, thanks very much. And I also would like to pay tribute to the local authorities and the council workers who've worked so diligently over the weekend. While most of us were in our beds listening to the howling of the wind, there were people out there making sure that our homes were safe. And I think it's really important that we pay tribute to them and to those workers who are still working on behalf of those power companies, connecting those very dangerous power cables under very difficult conditions. But you're quite right, it is at times like this that we have to make sure that we have a situation where they are financially viable. You'll be hearing later about the uplift that will be coming to local authorities after some very difficult years. You heard Eluned Morgan speak on the radio about how a few years ago they were looking at a 4% cut. You'll be looking at more than a 4% increase in the budget in relation to local authorities later on. So this is a very different situation from one we've had in the past. I'm really pleased that we haven't had a council in Wales where we've had an S114 notice, but what we will do is to continue to support local authorities, and of course we'll continue to listen to them. When it comes to the additional funding that was announced last week, it's generally via local authorities, but I'm very happy to send a note around later to make sure that people know how they should access that fund.
Canola question 8, Vaughan Gethin.
Diolch. Will the First Minister make a statement on the 7 planning applications that were called in for determination by Welsh ministers between November 2021 and November 2024?
I'm unable to comment on the detail or merits of any planning application that has been called in by the Welsh ministers, as this could prejudice the final decision.
Thank you. One of those 7 applications that has still not been determined is the Cardiff Parkway proposal in my constituency. It is based on land allocated for development in the Cardiff LDP that was approved by Welsh Government planners. More than 2 years after being called in, after 2 planning inspector inquiries and reports, the Welsh Government has still not been able to make a decision, with a further delay announced last week. The further representation sought on the schedule of building the rail station first are, of course, already part of a 106 agreement, and arrange for public transport to the site are not in the developer's individual gift. All of these questions could, of course, have been asked in the previous 2 years. I support the First Minister's priority to speed up planning decisions to help grow the economy, and I welcome the investment summit that she has already announced for next year. The length of time taken on not making a decision on Parkway is deeply unhelpful and will not act as a magnet for investment. Will the First Minister confirm that she will take a decision, whichever it is, as soon as practical to finally give certainty to the Parkway, and will she commit to a lessons learning exercise so that the Welsh Government does not repeat anywhere else in Wales the lengthy saga that my constituents have been put through over Cardiff Parkway?
Well, thanks very much. And you're quite right, this application has taken far too long, and it is important that we try and get a decision one way or the other in the next few weeks. Just in relation to the Cardiff Parkway development, whilst I don't want to make any further comment because this is a live application, what I am willing to do is to send you some details on what is within the proposed 106 agreement in relation to Cardiff Parkway, and I can assure you that that I will be making a decision on this as soon as possible.